The first prickling of unease came not as a sound but as a silence. My stylist Marco had just finished spraying the final cloud of setting mist over my upswept hair, and in the quiet hiss that followed, the vibration of my phone on the vanity felt like a seismic event. Clara never called during a preparation unless the world was ending. I nodded to Marco, who stepped back with a practiced, concerned look. I picked up the phone. "Clara? I'm mid-curl. This better be good." What came through the speaker wasn't words but a raw, gulping sob. My stomach plummeted. "Clara? Claire, breathe. What is it? Talk to me." Through a sound like she was drowning, she forced it out. The house. Valentino, they just called." Another wrenching sob. "Leo, he called them." A cold dread began to spread through my veins, counterpoint to the warmth of the makeup lights on my skin. "Leo. My patron, my boyfriend of 5 years, the man who held the strings to my entire world." "What did he do, Clara?" My voice was surprisingly calm, a flat lake over a turning depth. "He called in a favor. Elise, the emerald gown, it's to go to Sophia." The air left my lungs. The emerald gown. The Alina exclusive. A masterpiece of silk and beadwork that had taken my breath away when it arrived. It wasn't just a dress, it was armor. It was a statement. It was for tonight, for the Veritas Gala, where I knew for a fact that Julian Thorne, a director whose work I revered and who was casting his next epic, would be attending. I'd started mentally preparing for this night a month ago. Sophia. The name was a bitter pill on my tongue. Leo's newest obsession. A 22-year-old ingenue with the face of an angel and the ambition of a shark. She'd seen the dress during a fitting at my apartment, her eyes wide with avarice. She'd set her sights on it and it seemed claimed it. He said, Clara choked out, he said it's Sophia's first big event. He wants her to make a good impression. It's just a dress, Elise. Be generous. The quote was so perfectly him. Dismissive, condescending, wrapped in a false mantle of reasonableness. He knew exactly what that dress and this night meant to me. But my wants were now secondary to the whims of his new toy. The thought that followed was ice cold. I had played my role too well. For 5 years I had been Elise, the devoted, understanding, endlessly patient girlfriend. I had weathered his flings, his distractions, his casual cruelties, with a serene smile and a declaration that as long as I could be by his side, I could endure anything. He believed it. He believed I loved him to the bone, that I was incapable of living without him. My devotion had become his license to act without restraint. I ended the call with Clara, my hands steady though my insides were shaking. I looked at my reflection, the flawless makeup, the intricate hair, a masterpiece built on a crumbling foundation. Out, I said quietly to Marco and his team. Please. Give me 5 minutes. The moment the door shut, I picked up my phone again and called Diane, my manager. Her reaction was a string of expletives so creative it would make a sailor blush. I'm on it, she finally snarled. Every brand. I'll call every damn brand. For the next hour I sat in my silk robe, the clock ticking towards the gala, and listened as Diane worked the phone. Her voice, initially fierce and confident, slowly deflated. They're all booked. Short notice. I'm so sorry, Elise. The gossip mill, that voracious, invisible beast, had already gotten wind of it. I was a laughingstock before I'd even left my dressing room. A few well-meaning acquaintances from other suites drifted in, their eyes alight with malicious curiosity. Elise, darling. We heard. What a nightmare. Cooed Anya Petrova, a socialite whose greatest achievement was her last name. It's so late, what can you even do? There will be other galas, other chances. It's just a pity Julian Thorne is the guest of honor tonight. Word is he's making his final decisions for Ethelstan. I smiled, a tight, brittle thing. Thank you for your concern, Anya. I'm sure it will all work out. I waited until she left, the scent of her overpriced perfume lingering like a poison. I had to think. Panicking was a luxury I couldn't afford. My eyes scanned my contacts list, skipping past the useless numbers, the fair weather friends, the industry leeches. They landed on a name, Alexander Vance. We'd met months ago at an EMBA mixer. He was a different kind of titan than Leo. Older, quieter, his power not shouted but implied. We'd had a single, intriguing conversation about art investment. I'd filed him away as a potential future contact. The future was now. I took a deep breath and dialed. It went to voicemail. Of course it did. A man like Alexander Vance didn't answer unknown numbers. Mr. Vance, I said, my voice a careful blend of warmth and professional distress. This is Elise Sterling. We met at the Wharton Alumni Lecture. I'm in a rather embarrassing predicament tonight at the Veritas Gala, and I find myself without a suitable gown. I know it's an immense imposition, but if your contacts in the fashion world extend to a last-minute miracle, I would be eternally in your debt. I left my number and hung up. It was a Hail Mary. A desperate shot in the dark. For 3 hours I waited. I dismissed my team, sat in the growing darkness of my suite and waited. The pitying looks from the few staff members who saw me were a special kind of hell. Just as the clock passed the point of no return, when I had accepted I would be a no-show at the biggest event of the season, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. A car will be at the service entrance in 10 minutes. It will have something for you. AV. Relief, sharp and dizzying, washed over me. I flew into action, redoing my own makeup with trembling hands. The car arrived, a silent driver handing me a large black garment bag. I unzipped it in the elevator. It was an Alina. A different one. A bold, crimson gown with a dramatic, architectural neckline. It was stunning, but it was all wrong for me. The color was too aggressive, the cut too severe for the soft, ethereal image I'd cultivated for tonight. It was a dress for a queen, not a muse. But it was a dress. It was salvation. I arrived late. The gala was a whirl of light and jewels and noise. And there at the center of it all was Sophia, draped in my emerald silk. She glittered under the chandeliers, 1,000 diamonds catching the light, looking every bit the starry-eyed sprite Leo no doubt wanted her to be. She was clinging to his arm, preening. Leo caught my eye across the room and had the decency to look momentarily ashamed before turning his attention back to her. Clara, who had pulled herself together, found me, her eyes red-rimmed. You're here. Oh, Elise, you look beautiful. Her eyes flickered to Sophia. But you would have looked so much better in that dress. It was a loyal, foolish thing to say. And within minutes, those words, as they do in these vipers' nests, reached Sophia's ears. She detached herself from Leo and glided over, a glass of champagne in her hand, a smirk playing on her perfect lips. She stopped in front of me, looking me up and down with deliberate, insulting slowness. Elise, she purred. I heard you wanted to wear my dress too. She gave a tinkling little laugh. But Leo said, only a fresh young thing like me can really bring out that starry sprite feeling. She leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a malicious whisper. Elise, you'll be 30 in 2 years, right? People have to admit when they're getting old. I felt the eyes of the room on us. This was a test. Fail it and I was finished. I summoned every ounce of my acting skill, and gave her a gentle, almost maternal smile. At 28, I'm certainly not the ingenue in this room anymore, I said, my voice clear and carrying. I hope you never reach my age, Sophia. She blinked, her smirk faltering as her brain tried to untangle the insult wrapped in well wishes. But I was already giving a polite nod and turning away, melting into the crowd, heading for the sanctuary of the ladies' lounge. By the time she processed it and, I was sure, sent a stream of furious insults to my phone, I was already in my car heading home. Back in my apartment, I scrubbed the makeup from my face. My phone lit up with notifications. Not just from Sophia but from Clara. An endorsement I'd all but secured had been poached by Sophia. The show I was supposed to join tomorrow, a historical drama I'd fought for, had also been reshuffled. Jenny was now the second female lead, but with scenes and a billing that rivaled my own. I read the messages with a strange sense of detachment. To be fair, Leo was a generous patron. When he was fixated on someone, he was willing to heap every good thing in the world at their feet. I'd received that treatment too. It was how I'd gone from a nobody to a top-tier starlet in just 5 years. It was just a shame his so-called sincerity never lasted. I'd seen plenty of women who gave him their hearts end up with nothing. Someone had once sobbed to me at a party, Elise, tell me, how do you endure wave after wave of women around him? I'd quietly handed her a tissue. The truth was, I never expected his sincerity. I had learned very young that true love was the least reliable thing in the world. My mother had been duped by that so-called love, spending her life as a mistress while insisting she was the one he truly loved. She told me that one day my biological father would arrive in his Maybach to take us home. I'd believed her. Until the day she made me kneel and beg my aunt for tuition money. Until I didn't dare buy sanitary pads and had to steal paper liners from the school restroom. Until I broke down in tears because someone knocked over the tiny Children's Day cupcake the school had given me. That's when I understood. Love doesn't fill your stomach. It won't keep you alive. Love is a luxury, and for people like us it was a joke. But that's not what I told Leo. I told him I loved him with my whole sincere heart. I never made demands. I never put him in a difficult spot. Because I loved him, and as long as I could stay by his side, I was willing to endure the flock of women around him. That, of course, didn't really count as a lie. I loved Leo's money. I loved his connections. I loved the red carpet path he laid out for me that let me rise so quickly. How could that not count as love? He reveled in the feeling of being adored so wholly. I almost pitied him. If he had ever truly loved someone or been truly loved, he would have recognized instantly that my blazing devotion was nothing but an act. If he genuinely loved someone, how could you ever tolerate a third person stepping in? But maybe my acting was simply too good. Over the years, countless women had come and gone, yet he never replaced me. Now, however, I wanted to replace him. A year ago, I'd realized Leo had very little left to offer me. I was already a top-tier star. I could secure plenty of opportunities on my own, some even beyond his reach. Still, I didn't leave him immediately. Making an enemy of him was dangerous. I had to wait until the patron himself tired of me and paid me off. I had to be the devoted innocent until the very end. And I was waiting for a proper breakup fee. So, I bided my time waiting for Leo to hand me a reason. And tonight, with a gradient blue gown and a sneer from a girl half my age, he finally had. I slept soundly that night, a plan beginning to crystallize in the dark. The first move had been made. The game was finally truly on. The set of Imperial Twilight was a world of its own. A sprawling, painstakingly recreated ancient Chinese court buzzing with a nervous energy that had nothing to do with the historical drama we were filming and everything to do with the very modern drama unfolding within it. I arrived early the next morning, the hum of the generator trucks a familiar comfort. The air smelled of sawdust, coffee, and the faint, sweet scent of the plum blossoms on the trees. Beautiful but fake, just like everything else here. I could feel the crew's eyes on me as I walked to my trailer. A mixture of pity, curiosity, and the voracious hunger for gossip. The news of the gala had spread faster than the plague. I kept my head high, a slight, weary smile on my face, the picture of dignified resilience. A round-faced makeup artist I barely knew scurried over, pressing a cup of hot tea into my hands. "Stay strong, Elise," she whispered, her eyes wide with sympathy before she hurried away. I thanked her softly, the model of graciousness. The role of Elise Sterling, heartbroken but professional, had begun filming. The opening ceremony was halfway over when Sophia made her entrance. It was, of course, deliberate. A black van with tinted windows pulled up right next to the director's golf cart, and she emerged swaddled in a ridiculously fluffy white robe, oversized sunglasses hiding half her face despite the overcast sky. Leo was the main investor of the show, and Sophia, as his new darling, naturally received the highest treatment. A 5-star hotel suite instead of the crew apartments, a private nanny van that was nicer than my trailer, a personal screenwriter on standby to tweak her lines, not that there were many to tweak, and multiple unreasonable additional scenes that the director, a man named Zhang who lived in perpetual fear of losing his funding, accepted without a word. I saw the director's obsequious attitude and made a conscious decision to avoid her. My battlefield was not this dusty set. It was the court of public opinion. Clashing with her here would only make me look petty and difficult. But Sophia, emboldened by her victory at the gala and Leo's very public favor, wouldn't leave me alone. It started with small things, an accidental bump that sent my script flying into a puddle, a loud comment about aging actresses needing more time in the makeup chair. I took it all with a silent, stoic smile. Let her dig her own grave. On the third day we were filming a scene by the ornamental palace pond, a large, murky green water feature filled with koi fish that were probably the most well-treated beings on set. Our characters were supposed to have a tense confrontation on the bridge. Sophia, as the scheming concubine, was to push me, the virtuous empress, in a fit of rage. Action was called. We did the dialogue. Her delivery was flat, but director Zhang didn't call cut. Then came the push. On the first take it was a light, theatrical shove. I stumbled back as scripted. Cut. Sophia, more feeling. She's your rival. You hate her. Zhang called, his voice strained. Second take. She shoved me harder. I was ready for it, keeping my balance. Again. Harder. The third take. There was a glint in her eye that had nothing to do with acting. She put the full force of her body into it, a vicious, genuine push meant to hurt. I was ready. As I fell back, my own hands shot out, not to break my fall, but to grab the front of her elaborate silk gown. With a satisfying rip of fabric and a genuine shriek of surprise from her, I yanked her down into the pond with me. The water was shockingly cold and smelled overwhelmingly of algae and fish food. We landed with a tremendous splash that sent the koi fish fleeing in terror. Unfortunately for Sophia, the water was deeper than it looked, and she immediately began flailing, choking on a mouthful of green, murky water. She couldn't swim. I, on the other hand, had grown up near a lake. I stood up, the water coming to my waist, my heavy empress robes dragging me down, my makeup undoubtedly ruined. I was a picture of stunned, drenched shock. Sophia was a picture of pure, unadulterated panic, spluttering and gasping. And that was the exact moment Leo chose to make an unannounced visit to the set. He stood there on the bank, flanked by his entourage, his expression shifting from surprise to fury in a nanosecond. Sophia saw him and immediately burst into hysterical, humiliated tears. It was an Oscar-worthy performance, all things considered. Leo didn't hesitate. He waded into the pond, not even bothering to take off his ridiculously expensive-looking leather shoes, and swept her up into his arms. He carried her out, dripping pond scum onto the pristine gravel, and then his eyes found me. He looked at me with a mocking, cold smile. So, he said, his voice dripping with contempt. You've finally grown a temper. I stood in the pond, head lowered, my body trembling, partly from the cold, partly from practiced effort. I made sure my face was pale, my lips blue. I looked as pitiful and victimized as possible. Apologize to Sophia, Leo commanded, his voice echoing in the suddenly silent clearing. The entire crew had stopped to watch. If you do, I'll let this go. I looked up, letting my eyes well with tears that mixed with the pond water on my cheeks. I didn't do anything wrong, I replied softly, my voice trembling with a perfect blend of fear and principle. Leo was being embarrassed in front of everyone, and his temper, never far from the surface, flared. Then stay in the pond, he snarled. You can come out once you've figured it out. With that, he turned and walked away, carrying the still sobbing Sophia towards her luxurious trailer. Of course, I wasn't foolish enough to just stand there shivering. I waited. I waited until I saw the flash of a lens from behind a fake rock. A paparazzi who'd been tipped off, no doubt by my ever-efficient manager, Diane. I waited until I was sure he'd gotten enough shots of me, standing alone and forsaken in the filthy water. Then and only then I let my eyes roll back in my head and collapsed dramatically into the pond with a final, pathetic splash. On cue, Clara came screaming out of nowhere. Elise. Oh my God. Somebody help her. She's fainted. The cold. People rushed into the water to carry me out. The scene was one of perfect chaos. I was carried back to my much more modest trailer, a wave of genuine concern following me. After a hot shower, wrapped in a blanket, Clara handed me a tablet. The press release was already circulating. Young Master Leo stands up for new flame. Old lover Elise Sterling left drenched and humiliated on set. It was perfect. The pictures were even better. Me pale and trembling in the water. Leo cradling Sophia. Me being carried out limp and unconscious. The narrative was writing itself. I was just blow-drying my hair when my mother called. The sound of her ringtone was like nails on a chalkboard. I knew what was coming. What's going on with you? She demanded, her voice shrill with anxiety. You've been with Mr. Leo for 5 years, and you still can't outmaneuver that little fox? I rubbed my temples, exhaustion no longer an act. Stay out of it, mother. If I don't care, who will? She shot back. I've told you so many times, hurry up and give Mr. Leo a son. Then your future will be secure. I let out a cold, hollow laugh. You gave that man a son, didn't you? And in the end, aren't you still relying on me to support you? You ungrateful child, she snapped. Mom only wants what's best for you. How can you talk to me like that? If you don't hurry and use your youth and beauty to find a man, what will you do when you're old? A profound wave of sadness washed over me. All my hard work, all my struggles to build a career, none of it mattered to her. To her, finding a man was more important than everything I had achieved. She had lived the first half of her life off the money left behind by one man, and now in the latter half she hoped I'd find a man to support our whole family. She had lived as someone's mistress, and she urged me to become a woman who clung to others as well. She said that if I just let myself slide down I would eventually reach paradise. But I knew that paradise was a mirage. That's why I refused to fall. I had made it this far partly because Leo gave me resources, but also because I was diligent, clever, and relentless. Unfortunately, others like my mother only saw the former. I ended the call, her words echoing in my head. Our battlefield was never the small set of a drama. It was always on the keyboards of the masses. Yet neither Sophia nor Leo seemed to understand this. Sophia was probably still in her trailer, gloating over her supposed victory. Leo and I entered our first real Cold War. He was waiting for me to break to come crawling back. A few days later he got drunk. His friend called me to come pick him up. It was a test, a peace offering. Instead I forwarded the call to Sophia. His fury was legendary. He called me, his words slurred with alcohol and rage. "Elise," he spat. "I'll wait for you to come begging me." Over the years, I had played the role of a love-struck woman so convincingly that even his friends believed it. So when I let my mask slip just a little this time, Leo couldn't stand it. If he were smarter, he would have realized that when a subordinate no longer cares about their boss's emotions, it usually means they are preparing to leave. After our falling out, Leo doubled down on promoting Sophia. He came to the set in a grand show of support, pressuring me to bow my head. He wanted a public submission. Of course I would bow. But this time would be the last. I dialed his number. He hung up immediately. That was fine. I never lacked patience. I began sending him message after message on WeChat, my tone earnest and humble. "Leo, don't be angry anymore. Every day I spend fighting with you I cry myself to sleep. My birthday's coming soon. Will you come and share a bowl of sujo noodles with me?" It was a calculated move. I had once found out that Leo's mother had died young, his father was neglectful, and his only sense of warmth came from memories of his late mother who was from Suzhou. Every year on his birthday she made him a bowl of sujo noodles. So on our first birthday together when he asked me what I wanted I told him I wanted a bowl of sujo noodles too. I said my grandmother, long buried for more than a decade, was also from Suzhou. I was certain he would never bother to check. His eyes had turned red as he pulled me into his arms and promised, "From now on, I'll spend every birthday eating sujo noodles with you." He didn't reply to my messages until much later, writing only, "We'll see when the time comes." But I knew he would show up. The hook was set. The stage for the final act was being prepared. All I needed was for the players to take their positions. My birthday dawned with a sky of impossible, brilliant blue. It felt like a mockery. On set, the air was thick with a tension that had nothing to do with the scenes we were filming. Sophia, buoyed by Leo's very public support after the pond incident, was insufferable. She moved through the costume trailers and the craft services table with the smug assurance of a queen who has already won the war. I played my part to perfection, the quiet, suffering, dignified star, focusing on her work while nursing a private heartbreak. My performance off-camera was, I suspected, far better than anything I was delivering on it. The confrontation came over something trivial. A misplaced hairpin that belonged to my character, which was found on Sophia's vanity. It was a childish, transparent power play. "I must have picked it up by mistake," she said with a shrug, not even looking at me as she examined her own reflection. "These things all look the same after a while. You probably just dropped it. You're getting a little forgetful, aren't you, Elise?" The few crew members within earshot froze, their eyes darting between us. This was it. The moment to stop avoiding and start provoking. I didn't raise my voice. I simply walked over to her until we were almost toe-to-toe. I gave her a cold, razor-sharp smile and leaned in so close that only she could hear me, my voice a venomous whisper. "You're only acting this arrogant because Leo supports you," I murmured. "But do you know he's coming to set tonight? To celebrate my birthday. He's flying in just for me. So enjoy your moment, little girl. Because judging by that temper of his you're so proud of, Miss Sophia, your reign is about to end." Her head snapped around, her eyes wide with shock and instant, panicked disbelief. The smirk was utterly wiped from her face. You're lying. I simply arched an eyebrow and walked away, leaving her staring after me. I didn't have to wait long. Within minutes, I saw her huddled in a corner, phone pressed to her ear. She was trying to keep her voice low, but the set was too quiet, and her anxiety made it carry. You're flying in tonight, right? She asked, a pleading note in her voice. There was a pause as she listened to his reply. I saw her shoulders tense. Yeah, I'll drop by the set tonight. I could almost hear his impatient tone through the phone. His words, his tone. It must have stirred a genuine sense of crisis in her because she shot me a look of pure, unadulterated hatred before snapping her phone shut and storming off, muttering under her breath, "Who knows who will have the last laugh?" I almost smiled. She'd butchered the idiom. It was, "Who will die first," not, "Who will laugh last." The irony was perfect. Leo, true to form, didn't just arrive. He made an event of it. He booked the entire on-set catering hall, ordered a towering, extravagant cake, and invited the whole crew to celebrate Elise Sterling's birthday. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. He was publicly honoring me while privately dismantling my career. He wanted the world to see him as the magnanimous patron, the good boyfriend making amends. I played the part of the touched, slightly sad but gracious birthday girl. I accepted the well wishes, smiled at the jokes, and kept one eye on Leo. He was playing host, clapping people on the back, but his eyes were restless. He was waiting for me to break, to thank him profusely, to publicly capitulate. I gave him nothing but a polite, distant smile. Then, right as the crowd gathered to sing happy birthday and the giant cake was wheeled out, Leo vanished. One moment he was by the champagne tower, the next he was gone. A hush fell over the room. Everyone was looking at me, their expressions a mixture of pity and morbid curiosity. The abandoned birthday girl. I made a show of looking around, a faint, confused frown on my face. "I'll go find him," I murmured to the director, my voice laced with gentle concern. Maybe he took a call. I slipped out of the noisy hall into the quiet of the studio's back corridors. The moment I was alone, all pretense of confusion dropped. I pulled out my phone and opened a discreet hidden app. 6 months ago, when I'd first begun planning my exit, I'd paid a small fortune to a brilliantly amoral tech kid to install a one-time use location tracker on Leo's phone. It could be activated remotely from mine, but once used it would erase itself without a trace. I'd been saving it for a moment exactly like this. A single red dot pulsed on the map of the studio complex. The stairwell at the far end of the soundstage. Of course. I moved quickly, my heels silent on the concrete floor. As I approached the heavy fire door to the stairwell, I heard them before I saw them. The sounds were unmistakable, low, hungry moans, the wet smack of lips and tongues, ragged breathing. My stomach turned. I took a deep, steadying breath, forcing my trembling hands to still. This was it. The point of no return. I slid my phone from my pocket, switched it to video mode, and carefully, silently, eased it through the narrow crack between the door and its frame. The screen showed everything. Leo had Sophia pinned against the concrete wall, her long designer dress bunched up around her waist. His hands were everywhere. After a few minutes of frantic kissing, he turned her around, pressing her against the wall. She glanced back over her shoulder with a sly, triumphant smile. "Isn't this exciting, Leo?" she purred. "And to think we're doing this just one wall away from Lily. Ruining her little party." Her taunt gave me a perfect, clear shot of her face. The camera didn't lie. Leo chuckled, a dark, possessive sound. "So what? Tell me," she teased, her voice breathy. "Is she better or am I better?" "Shut up and focus," he muttered, grinding against her. "Leo, be gentle," she whined, though her tone was anything but protesting. "Who was it that begged me to come here?" he growled and smacked her rear with a loud crack that echoed in the hollow stairwell. She yelped but then clung tighter to him. I felt a cold detachment settle over me. I was no longer a participant in this drama. I was its director. I watched the scene unfold on my screen with a critic's eye. The lighting was bad, the acting was mediocre, but the plot was compelling. When he finished, I glanced at the timer. 6 minutes and 14 seconds of footage. Short but more than enough. It was a perfect, damning narrative. I tucked my phone away, the weight of it in my hand feeling like a loaded weapon. It was time for my entrance. I pushed open the heavy stairwell door. The sound made them jump apart, fumbling with their clothes. They were still flushed, disheveled, caught in the act. The scent of sex and Sophia's cloying perfume hung thick in the air. Sophia was the first to recover. She had the audacity to flash me a smug, victorious smile as she tugged her dress down. "Sorry, Elise," she said, not sounding sorry at all. "I guess we ruined your birthday party." Leo quickly straightened his shirt. He hadn't even bothered to take off his jacket. He acted casual as if I'd just caught him discussing the weather. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice slightly hoarse. "Have they cut the cake yet?" I didn't answer. I just stood there, frozen in the doorway. I let my lower lip begin to tremble. I made my eyes well up with tears, letting them spill over and stream down my cheeks in silent, perfect tracks. I put every ounce of my acting training into that moment. The betrayed woman, her world shattering in front of her. Seeing me cry, really cry, Leo's arrogance faltered for a second. He gestured impatiently at Sophia. "Go. Wait for me in the car." She glared at me with pure venom, then bent down, snatched her underwear from the concrete floor, and as she brushed past me she purred, "Leo, I'll be waiting in the car." Then she shot me a final mocking glance. "You're not even his girlfriend. Why are you acting so self-righteous?" Only after she left, her footsteps echoing down the stairs, did Leo step forward. He reached out to hold me. All right. Don't cry. The cake's still waiting. I'll go back with you." I shoved him away hard. The smell of her perfume on him, mixed with the stale heat of their encounter, made me genuinely nauseous. He looked surprised, then annoyed. He grabbed me again, pulling me into his arms. "Stop it, Elise." I pushed him off harder this time, putting all my strength into it. Before he could explode, I seized the chance to strike first. "Leo," I choked out between sobs that were now 70% real adrenaline. "How could you do this to me? On my birthday?" He rubbed his temples, his impatience returning. "Elise, you're the one who said that as long as you could stay by my side, you'd endure anything. You've gotten along fine with the other women before, haven't you?" I clutched my chest as if he'd stabbed me, letting the tears flow freely. The only reason I could tolerate those women wasn't because I was stronger. I wept, my voice breaking on every word. It was because I loved you more than they did. But how could you trample all over my heart just because I love you? How could you use my love as a weapon against me? Maybe my tears or the raw, unexpected pain in my voice genuinely got to him. For a fleeting second, his anger melted, replaced by something that looked like guilt. "Elise, I really did want to celebrate your birthday. It's all her fault." She came on to me. "Come on, I'll buy you a new bag." "All right. A Birkin. The one you wanted." I cried harder, shaking my head, making it clear that no material thing could fix this. "Be good. Don't cry," he coaxed, his voice softer now. "Next time I won't do this again. I promise." I went very still. I looked up at him, my tear-stained face a mask of devastation. I let my voice drop to a broken whisper. "There won't be a next time." His brows shot up. "What did you say?" I took a shaky breath, meeting his gaze directly. I said, "Leo, let's break up." The words hung in the air between us, stark and final. For once, Leo was speechless. He actually looked stunned. He'd expected tears, maybe a scene followed by forgiveness. He had not expected this. He lowered his voice, a last-ditch attempt to regain control. "Take back what you just said and I'll pretend I never heard it." I didn't answer. I just kept looking at him, my tears still falling but my resolve unwavering. His face darkened, twisted with anger that was laced with something else. Panic. He let out a harsh, disbelieving laugh. "Elise, think carefully. I never take back what I've said. Once we're done, we're done. There's no medicine for regret." I gave him a calm, sad smile. It was time for my final monologue, the lines I had rehearsed in the mirror for a year. "Leo, maybe you don't remember," I began, my voice soft and full of a manufactured nostalgia that was my masterpiece. "But the first time we met wasn't at Jason's dinner party. It was earlier, at the Celestial Awards. That night it poured rain. My car had broken down and I was stranded. You handed me your umbrella. It was black with a silver handle. From St. DuPont. You didn't even say anything, just handed it to me and got into your car. From that moment, no one else could ever enter my heart." I saw a flicker of confusion in his eyes. He didn't remember. Of course he didn't. I'd stolen the story from an old black and white movie. I remembered you instantly when we met again at Jason's. I thought it would be enough just to stay by your side. Over the years women came and went around you. Yet you never replaced me. Last year on your birthday, you took me to your private villa in Sonia. You told me it was our place. You said I was your home. I was layering it on thick, weaving a tapestry of a love so deep and profound that his betrayal was not just personal, but mythological in its cruelty. I was building my coffin and nailing it shut myself, ensuring I would be remembered as the tragic heroine. I believed you, I whispered, a fresh wave of tears, this time tears of triumph filling my eyes. I gave you everything. And you did this. I let my voice break completely. I turned and walked away, leaving him standing alone in the grimy stairwell, the sounds of my abandoned birthday party still echoing faintly from down the hall. And as I walked, I prayed to every god I didn't believe in that the tiny wireless microphone I had clipped inside my dress, the one connected to the sound system in the main hall, had been working perfectly. I had made sure to help the sound guys set up earlier, ensuring my mic was left on, its channel live. Somehow I had a feeling the entire crew had just heard our exchange. And somehow I knew that recording would find its way online. The performance of my life was over. Now it was time for the encore. I didn't go back to the party. I walked straight out of the studio past the confused security guards, and into the waiting car where Clara was already poised, her phone glued to her ear. She took one look at my face, a carefully constructed mask of shattered devastation, and immediately ended her call. Elise? What happened? Are you okay? I didn't answer. I just slid into the leather seat, leaned my head against the window and let out a single shuddering breath. It was all the confirmation she needed. She tapped the driver's partition. Home. Now. The car pulled away. The moment we turned the corner, my posture straightened. The tears stopped. I pulled a wipe from my purse and started meticulously cleaning the ruined makeup from under my eyes. Well? Clara asked, her voice hushed with anticipation. I handed her my phone. Play it. He fumbled with it, pulling up the video. The dim, grainy footage lit up her face. I watched her expression shift from curiosity to horror to vindictive glee. Oh my God, she breathed. You got it. You actually got it. And her face, it's so clear. The audio is the real prize, I said, my voice calm, clinical. She admits to ruining the party. He admits it's my birthday. It's perfect. What do we do with it? Clara's eyes were wide. Do we leak it? Now. Not us, I said, taking the phone back. Never us. Find a broker. Someone disposable. Have them take it to Leo. Tell them to ask for a number so obscene it'll make his eyes water. And have them say, you don't want people to know it only lasted 6 minutes, do you? Clara let out a shocked giggle, then clapped a hand over her mouth. Elise, that's evil. It's business, I corrected her, though a small, cold smile touched my lips. He'll pay. His pride is more valuable to him than money. And he'll never know it ends up back with me. I leaned back, exhaustion finally beginning to seep through the adrenaline. And Clara? The microphone was on. The whole crew heard everything. Her jaw dropped. The breakup? The speech. The whole thing. She stared at me for a long moment, a slow grin spreading across her face. You're a genius. A ruthless, magnificent genius. By the time we reached my apartment, the first whispers were already beginning to bloom online. Blurry photos from the party of Leo's disappearance, of me leaving looking distraught. A cryptic tweet from a PA. Well, that was awkward. #Imperial Twilight #birthday drama. I took a long, hot shower, scrubbing the feel of the stairwell and the sound of their voices from my skin. When I emerged wrapped in a towel, my phone was blowing up. Not with calls from Leo, his pride would keep him silent, but from numbers I didn't recognize. Colleagues. Friends. Gossip bloggers. I ignored them all. I turned off my phone, ordered takeout and went to bed. I slept a deep, dreamless sleep, the sleep of the justly victorious. I awoke to a world on fire. Clara was at my door at 7 a.m., her iPad in hand, her face flushed with exhilaration. You need to see this. Overnight, the audio from my microphone had leaked. Not the video, that was my insurance policy, but the crystal clear audio of the entire confrontation in the stairwell. My tearful accusations, Leo's dismissive cruelty, Sophia's smug taunts. Someone had spliced it with photos from the gala, from the pond incident, from happier times with Leo. It was a 3-act tragedy in a 5-minute video. The hashtag protect Elise was trending at number 1. Hashtag pure love warrior Elise was number 2. The narrative was everything I could have dreamed of and more. Crew. I can only say Leo must be blind. Elise is 10,000 times better than that other woman. The way she looked at him the day she fell into the water broke my heart. The entertainment industry really has someone this pure. I'm crying. Elise is always cold and distant to everyone. But whenever Leo's name comes up, you can't miss the warmth in her eyes. People said she was only with him for resources, but I always knew she truly loved him. You can't hide love. If their ship isn't real, then the world owes Elise an Oscar. One day Leo will regret this. He'll never find anyone who loves him the way Elise did. The comments were a flood of support. My fan base had quadrupled overnight. The incident where Sophia's team had suppressed the news of the pond accident had resurfaced, making her look even more manipulative. Anonymous accounts, no doubt planted by Diane and Clara, popped up everywhere, singing my praises and trashing Sophia's professionalism. I can confirm every word. His acting is awful. The teacher had to reshoot again and again. Whenever he had scenes, we were guaranteed overtime. And with that stiff face from too much plastic surgery, how could his acting possibly be good? Yet he still dares to market himself as some fiery peony while trying to suppress Elise. Shameless. Public opinion had almost entirely sided with me. I was no longer Elise Sterling, the kept woman. I was Elise Sterling, the fragile yet resilient Jasmine, heartbroken by love but enduring with grace. I scrolled through the headlines, a strange numbness settling over me. This was what I wanted. This was the plan. So why did I feel so hollow? I shook the feeling off. This was no time for self-pity. This was time for action. Pack a bag, I told Clara. I'm getting out of town. Where? Ainon. The beach would be good for the heartbroken photos. I shook my head, a plan forming. Check Alexander Vance's social media. His public one, the business one. Where was his last check-in? Clara's eyes widened in understanding. She typed furiously. Singapore. He's at a summit at Marina Bay Sands. Perfect, I said. Book me a flight to Singapore. And get me a room at Marina Bay Sands. The most visible one they have. Elise, the director only granted you 3 days off. Then I'll cry efficiently, I said, my voice dry. If I could only get 3 days, I'd have flown to Paris to cry, to London to cry, to New York to cry. But Singapore has the best kaya toast. And the best view. I wasn't just going to cry. I was going to stage a performance. And I needed the right audience of one. 2 days later, I was standing on the rooftop observation deck of Marina Bay Sands, the famous infinity pool at my back, the glittering skyline of Singapore spread out before me. The wind whipped at my hair and my simple white linen dress. I'd been there for 2 days, a solitary, beautiful figure of sorrow against a breathtaking backdrop. Paparazzi, alerted by a concerned fan, had already gotten shots of me looking pensive and alone. The narrative of my healing exile was building. I saw him before he saw me. Alexander Vance emerged from the elevator, looking every inch the titan of industry in a tailored suit, though he'd ditched the tie. He scanned the deck, his gaze cool and assessing before it landed on me. I made sure I was positioned perfectly, a line of empty beer bottles beside me, another held loosely in my hand. The November breeze was warm, but I made a show of shivering slightly. He didn't say anything at first. He just walked over and draped his jacket over my shoulders. It was heavy, expensive, and smelled faintly of sandalwood and power. I didn't refuse it. That kind of unspoken physical closeness between a man and a woman carried its own meaning. I looked up at him, feigning surprise, my eyes artfully red-rimmed from the wind. "Senior," I said, using the respectful term he'd once offered. "What are you doing here?" He smiled, a small knowing quirk of his lips. "I heard a beautiful woman has been standing here in the wind for 2 days, so I came to check on her." I tilted my head sadly, angling my better profile toward him. "The vulnerable one. Please don't tease me, senior." "Broke up with your boyfriend?" he asked, his voice low. I tipped my head back, took a swig of beer I didn't want, and laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "Yeah. Sorry to let you see me like this." I reached for another bottle. Alexander caught my hand. His grip was firm, warm. "If you don't want to smile, you don't have to." The simple kindness in his words, so at odds with Leo's transactional cruelty, made my eyes sting for real. Tears welled up and began to fall, silent and genuine this time. He saw it. He opened his arms. "Come on. Use your senior's shoulder." I leaned against his chest, restrained, silent, letting my body shake with silent sobs. I cried for the girl I had been, for the performance I had to maintain, for the exhausting, relentless calculation of it all. After what felt like a long time, he sighed, his breath stirring my hair. "Don't cry anymore. You're breaking my heart." I looked up at him, my vision blurred. He studied my face, my genuine distress, and suddenly chuckled softly. "Usually you're so quick-witted. How can you be so clueless now, Elise?" He brushed a tear from my cheek with his thumb. "Leo is nothing more than a spoiled heir riding on his family's coattails. He isn't worth your tears. You deserve better." His eyes held a quiet confidence that was more intimidating than any of Leo's bluster. It made me flinch. This was a different league. A different game altogether. I stepped back quickly, avoiding his gaze, pulling his jacket tighter around me. "Thank you for the comfort, Senior. I should go." A spotless white flower couldn't afford to shatter her image by jumping into another man's arms too quickly. I had to leave him wanting more. On the third morning, I flew back home without another word. The moment I landed, my phone buzzed with a WeChat message. Back home. It was from Alexander. I waited an hour before replying. After crying, I still have to return and keep working. I had no intention of moving too fast with him. There were already countless women eager to climb into Alexander Vance's bed. I wasn't going to be one of them. I hadn't worked so hard just to move from one gilded cage to another. My ambition was bigger now. If I could stir his heart, maybe I could leverage it into something far greater than being an actress. I wanted to be the one who owned the studio, not just the one who worked in it. Clara was at the airport to pick me up. The moment I got into the car, she launched into her report. Jenny tried to defend herself online, claiming she and Leo were both single when they got together. But Leo slapped her down in an interview. He told reporters, "I've just had a small quarrel with my girlfriend. Please give us some space. If people keep digging, I'll never win her back." I raised an eyebrow. He was still trying to control the narrative, still trying to pull me back into his orbit. And Emma smirked. Public opinion exploded. Sophia's been nailed as the mistress. Now there are two camps. One wants you to shine alone and never look back. The other is shipping you and Leo hard, eagerly waiting to watch him suffer as he tries to win you back. I nodded. I want to know my current ranking on all the hot lists, the rate of fan growth, and whether any new brands have reached out over the past few days. "All at the top," Clara reported with satisfaction. "The dramas you starred in before are surging in views. Several luxury brands have already made initial contact. The heartbroken but strong image is gold." By the time she finished her report, the car had reached the set. When I walked in, the crew looked at me with a new kind of respect mixed with pity. The round-faced makeup artist rushed over. "Stay strong," she whispered again, but this time there was awe in her eyes. I forced a weary smile, thanked them all sincerely, and buried myself back in work. The role of Elise Sterling had been rewritten. I was no longer the victim. I was the victor. And the next act was about to begin. The set of Imperial Twilight felt different when I returned. The pity in the crew's eyes had been replaced by a wary respect. I was no longer just the actress who'd been wronged. I was the woman who had walked away and in doing so had captured the sympathy of the entire nation. My quiet dignity was a shield. Sophia, when she deigned to show up, was met with averted eyes and cold shoulders. Her attempts to play the victim had backfired spectacularly. She was poison and everyone knew it. I worked with a focused intensity, my lines delivered with a new depth of feeling. Every scene was a reminder that I was here on my own merit, not because of any man's favor. The director, Zhang, was almost obsequious, his previous fear of Leo now overshadowed by a fear of the negative press I could generate if crossed. A week after my return, Leo showed up. He didn't make a scene. He just appeared at the edge of the set, leaning against a lighting rig, watching me film a quiet, emotional soliloquy. He was holding a long black velvet box. I saw him out of the corner of my eye but didn't break character. I let the scene play out, pouring all the genuine frustration and pain of the last 5 years into the words of an empress betrayed by her court. When director Zhang finally called, "Cut," the spell broke. The crew shifted uncomfortably, watching the silent standoff. Leo approached. He looked tired. "Elise." "Mr. Leo," I replied, my voice neutral, professional. I didn't call him by his first name. The distance was a chasm. He held out the box. "I remember you once said you really liked this one." He opened it. Inside, on a bed of black silk, lay a Vacheron Constantin Patrimony watch. It was exquisite, minimalist, breathtakingly expensive. It was also a peace offering of the most impersonal kind. I placed the order with the Geneva boutique 6 months ago. It only just arrived. I remembered. I'd pointed it out in a magazine once, commenting on its classic beauty. He'd grunted and turned the page. He hadn't been listening, but he'd filed the information away for a moment exactly like this. Every time Leo returned from another woman and wanted me back, he would offer a gift. This watch cost well into 6 figures. When I was 17 reading romance novels, I could never understand why the heroine would refuse diamonds or jewels. Now I understood. When you can buy it yourself, those things lose their meaning. Some things, dignity, freedom, self-respect, were far more important than a sparkling trinket. 3 years ago, cornered and desperate, I had lowered my head before Leo and agreed to become one of the flowers in his greenhouse. But in those 3 years I had worked relentlessly, role after role, without pause. All so that now I could stand before him with my head held high and refuse to let him keep setting my price. "Mr. Leo, I can't accept this for nothing," I said flatly. I turned to leave, to go back to my trailer. He caught my arm, his grip firm. "Elise, this time it was my fault." The admission seemed to cost him something. "I've already broken up with Sophia. All her scenes in this drama will be cut. You're still the female lead." He rubbed the back of his neck, a rare gesture of uncertainty. "I miss you." I cut him off, my voice cold and clear. "Mr. Leo, your personal affairs have nothing to do with me. If there's nothing else, I'll be going." I pulled my arm from his grasp and walked away, quickly and purposefully. With so many eyes on us, he didn't dare try to stop me again. So he called in the big guns. My mother. On the day filming wrapped, she was waiting for me at the studio gates, her face a thundercloud of disapproval. She grabbed my arm the moment I stepped out, her nails digging into my skin. "Come with me right now. You need to apologize to Mr. Leo." Swallowing my fury under the stares of the departing crew, I all but dragged her to my waiting car. Once inside, the partition up, I yanked my arm free. "Are you insane? Leo was the one who cheated. Publicly. Humiliatingly. Why should I apologize?" My mother wailed, pounding her chest in a dramatic gesture I knew all too well. "It was just a fling. Couldn't you endure it? A man like him. It's to be expected." I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "I've endured it for 5 years, Mother. Isn't that long enough?" She froze, then muttered, her voice wheedling now. "But after all, everything you have now is thanks to Mr. Leo." "No," I said, the word like a block of ice. "Everything I have is thanks to myself. Yes, Leo gave me resources, but I had to be good enough to carry them. I was the one who stayed up all night learning lines. I was the one who performed my own stunts in the freezing cold. I was the one who delivered the performances that made his investments profitable. And besides, he's a major shareholder in my agency. Half of everything I earn goes into his pocket. He hasn't lost a thing. He profited from my labor." Her lips trembled. "But you've been with him for 5 years. Don't tell me you feel nothing for him." The rage I had held back for a lifetime finally exploded. I slammed the thermos I was holding against the car door. "Feelings? Do you not remember why I was with him in the first place?" My voice rose, shaking with pent-up fury. "When I was 22, you stole the money I borrowed through online loans to pay for your cancer surgery and used it to cover my brother's gambling debt. You cried and told me, 'What else can I do? The whole family is relying on your brother.'" I was screaming now, years of resentment breaking free. Rely on him for what? I was the one who took out the loan to save your life. I was the one who dropped out of school. I was the one who worked 3 jobs. He was in a casino. She clung to me, sobbing now, real tears this time. "Elise, I know I've failed you. You don't have to worry about me. I won't treat this illness. I refuse to be your burden." She said it so easily, a lifelong manipulator playing her highest card. How could I possibly not care? I knew the fastest money was in the entertainment industry, so I'd thrown myself headfirst into it, but I'd underestimated just how cruel it was. At another dinner party, I'd nearly been assaulted by a producer. Leo had appeared in my life like a savior dropped from the sky. He'd said he could arrange the best thoracic surgeon for my mother. He'd said he could place my gambling-addicted brother in his company with his own people watching over him. I'd asked, "And what's the price?" He'd smiled warmly. "No price. I just like you." At that time, with my mother's illness, the debt collectors hounding me, and an exploitative agency backing me into a corner, I'd had no choice but to accept Leo's generosity. In the beginning, he'd treated me so well that I'd almost believed we were truly in love. He'd often told me, "Elise, you don't need to work so hard. You've got me." Sometimes I'd wavered. He was right. Why was I pushing myself until I fainted from exhaustion? Why couldn't I just relax? Before I could figure it out, another woman appeared. When I'd asked about her, he'd brushed me off with a smile. "It's nothing, just a fling." The words had struck me like lightning. I had always hated the way my mother clung to men for survival. Yet there I was, nearly repeating her path. From that moment, I'd sworn to keep myself awake. Never again would I try to rely on anyone else. My fate had to rest in my own hands. I looked at my mother now, her face streaked with tears. "If you try to pressure me again," I said, my voice dangerously calm, "I'll cut off your credit card. Don't believe me? Try it. Let's see if Leo will give you money to spend now that I'm gone." She fell silent. I might not have had full control of my fate yet, but at least I could control hers. I sent her away in a taxi, watching it disappear into the traffic. The confrontation left me drained but clear-headed. I threw myself back into work. And suddenly, it felt as though fortune itself had finally decided to smile upon me. A luxury cosmetics brand that had stalled for months suddenly waived its probation period and handed me a global ambassador contract. Prestigious magazines invited me to shoot their covers one after another, giving me the coveted fashion Grand Slam, Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, Elle, all in one season. Even a legendary management team I had once thought out of reach, known for handling A-list Hollywood talent, extended an olive branch. Blessings fell from the sky one after another, to the point that even Clara grew suspicious. "Mr. Leo must really be spending a fortune to win you back," she muttered, examining a contract. I didn't confirm or deny. But deep down I didn't believe Leo had that much power. His influence was domestic, transactional. This felt different. More strategic. More global. Then at the Phoenix Awards it all became clear. I won. Best Actress. For a small independent film I'd done as a passion project years ago, before Leo. The one he told me was a waste of my pretty face. And the one to hand me the trophy was Alexander Vance. He stood on stage, impossibly tall and commanding in his tuxedo, a faint smile on his lips as he read out my name. The crowd erupted. I walked up the steps, my heart hammering, not from nerves but from the sheer audacious perfection of it. He held the trophy out to me. Our fingers brushed. The cameras flashed, capturing everything. "Congratulations, Elise," he said, his voice low enough that only I and the microphone between us could hear. "Thank you, Mr. Vance," I replied, my voice trembling with just the right amount of overwhelmed gratitude. After the ceremony, he sought me out in the press scrum, a seemingly casual meeting. "Does winning make you happy?" he asked with a smile, his eyes knowing. In that instant I understood. These resources, this sudden influx of prestige, they weren't Leo's doing. They were Alexander's. A quiet, powerful demonstration of what he could offer. Half teasing, half serious, I asked, "If I said no, would Senior think I was ungrateful?" Alexander took a step closer, looking down at me with a quiet dominance that made the air around us crackle. "Then why don't you just tell me directly what it is you want?" I lowered my gaze and stepped back, putting a careful inch of distance between us. "Senior, you've been showering me with resources and opportunities. What is it you want in return? Are you testing my price?" He clearly hadn't expected me to be so direct. A flicker of surprise, then admiration crossed his features. I drew a steadying breath and lifted my eyes to his. "When I deal with people, it's always heart for heart. Yet you treat me as though I'm a commodity with a price tag. Realizing you've never seen me as your equal, it honestly makes me unhappy." I gave a small, sad smile. "It's late. Excuse me." Without waiting for his reply, I turned and walked away, the weight of the trophy heavy in my hand. It was a risk. A huge one. But if I had simply accepted his generosity, I would have been trapped in another lopsided relationship. A different kind of kept woman. Once was enough. Back home I didn't sleep. I took a picture of a passage from my well-worn copy of Jane Eyre, the page bathed in the soft light of my bedside lamp. I sent it to Alexander. Do you think because I am poor, obscure, plain and little I am soulless and heartless? You think wrong. I have as much soul as you, and full as much heart. I am not talking to you now through the medium of custom conventionalities, nor even of mortal flesh. It is my spirit that addresses your spirit. Just as if both had passed through the grave and we stood at God's feet equal, as we are. I believed with his education he would understand. I was subtly pleasing him, placing us in the roles of Jane and Rochester, but I was also issuing a challenge. I was not a commodity. Soon after, my phone lit up with a WeChat message from him. Junior, I offended you. Please give me a chance to make it right. I smiled in satisfaction, stretched lazily and turned off my phone. The game had changed. The board was set. And for the first time I felt like I was holding the pieces, not just being moved by them. The third time Alexander Vance asked me out, I said yes. Not with the eager desperation of a woman grateful for his attention, but with the measured grace of someone granting an audience. I'd made him wait. I'd made him apologize. The power dynamic had subtly, irrevocably shifted. He chose a restaurant with a stunning river view, a place where the lighting was soft, the music was low, and the other diners were too powerful to care about a celebrity in their midst. We made polite small talk about the awards, about the industry. He was charming, intelligent, and he watched me with an intensity that was both flattering and unnerving. He wasn't just looking at my face. He was trying to see the gears turning behind my eyes. I waited for the main course to be served before I gently steered the conversation onto the track I had prepared. Senior, I began, sipping my wine. Do you still remember our agreement? He looked intrigued. Agreement? The one we made after your lecture at Wharton. I'd mentioned I wanted to learn about investment. You said, I let a playful smile touch my lips. You said it was a very professional field. And then you joked that if I passed the CFA you'd teach me. A faint look of surprise crossed his features, followed by dawning recollection. He had clearly not taken me seriously at the time. It had been a throwaway line, a polite way to deflect a beautiful woman's vague interest in his world. We shook on it. I reminded him, my tone light but my eyes steady. For a moment Alexander was silent. He looked at me, his head slightly tilted, as if reassessing a complex financial model that had just unexpectedly yielded a massive return. You actually passed? He asked, genuine disbelief in his voice. I lowered my gaze modestly and nodded. All 3 levels. I had researched it exhaustively. The Chartered Financial Analyst program was the gold standard. The most grueling, respected credential in the world of finance. It was my ticket out. For that exam I had studied on my iPad during every break on set, in the dead of night in my trailer, on flights to promotional events. Of course, the moment anyone walked by I would quickly switch the screen back to a script. Because of that, my reputation on set was impeccable. Everyone said Elise Sterling was so dedicated, always studying her lines. A hardworking actress who could really focus. The only pity, they whispered, was that she wasn't very bright. After all that studying she still occasionally flubbed her lines. They would sigh, heaven rewards diligence. She'll become a great actress one day. Heaven rewards diligence. I'd passed all 3 levels on the first try. Alexander leaned back in his chair, a slow, appreciative smile spreading across his face. It was the first truly unguarded expression I'd seen from him. Why? He asked, his curiosity palpable. Why go through all that? You're at the peak of your acting career. The truth was I didn't want to be an actress forever. I wanted to be capital itself. But I wouldn't say that. Not yet. Instead I tilted my head, the picture of thoughtful ambition. If one day I successfully transition into investment, Senior, will you finally see me as an equal? As a true friend, not just a pretty vase. He gave a soft, helpless laugh, conceding the point. We agreed. No bringing up old debts. Then his expression grew serious. If you feel guilty, don't hold anything back when you teach me. Reading from books is always shallow. I learn best by doing. After a pause he nodded. All right. And just like that, I acquired the most formidable finance tutor in the world. With Alexander as my guide, I began looking for small projects to test the waters. The opportunities that normally wouldn't have been open to a mere actress suddenly became accessible. When I invoked Alexander's name, not as a romantic partner but as my mentor, doors magically swung open. People allowed me in with a token share, 10, 20, maybe $50,000. It was patronizing, but it was a start. I was cautious to the point of paranoia. Even for a 500,000 renminbi project, I would shamelessly ask Alexander to vet it for me. I played the role of the eager, slightly overwhelmed student to perfection. He was happy to guide me step by painstaking step, and I absorbed everything like a sponge. I learned about due diligence, cap tables, liquidation preferences, term sheets. The language of power began to replace the language of scripts. After a few small, successful projects, our conversations evolved. They were no longer one-sided Q&A sessions. They became genuine back-and-forth discussions. I could hold my own. I could challenge his assumptions, propose alternative models. I saw the moment he realized I wasn't just memorizing. I was understanding, synthesizing, innovating. My investments began to turn steady profits. A small tech startup here, a piece of commercial real estate there. Soon I began to build a reputation of my own in the circle. Whispers followed me. Elise Sterling? The actress? She's surprisingly sharp. Vance is mentoring her. The steakhouse my friend had been planning, the one I'd used as an excuse to thank Alexander months ago, was delayed for over half a year. We finally went just as one of my first major investments, a boutique production company, had its first box office hit. The wagyu was perfectly grilled, melting on the tongue. Alexander raised his glass to me. "I've been hearing everyone say, you're an investment genius," he said with a smile. I placed a perfectly sliced piece of meat onto his plate, smiling sweetly. "That's only thanks to you being such a good teacher." He caught my hand then, his grip firm, his eyes no longer those of a teacher looking at a student, but of a man looking at a woman who had become his equal. "You know," he said, his voice low, "I've never wanted to be just your teacher." I slipped my hand away, deftly lowered my eyes and sighed softly. "Senior," I said, my voice laced with a believable regret. "Give me a little more time." He wasn't pleased. Anyone would be unhappy after half a year of not sleeping with the person they wanted. But I wasn't worried. Powerful men always had higher needs than others. There were plenty of women willing to warm Alexander Vance's bed, but only one who could sit across from him and talk about philosophy and investment like an equal. Me. That night I sent him a message. It was a line from a poem I knew he loved. "I must be the kapok tree beside you, standing tall with you as tree to tree." It was from Shu Ting's to the oak tree. I was telling him that everything I worked for was to be worthy of him, to stand with him, not beneath him. Alexander clearly understood. The next day he introduced me to an opportunity that made my previous investments look like child's play. An entertainment-focused equity fund. It was a chance to get in on the ground floor of major film financing, to have a real stake in the industry that had once owned me. The buy-in was steep. Astronomically so. It would require me to liquidate almost everything I had. I hesitated, staring at the numbers. If it succeeded, I could be financially free in one stroke. If it failed, I'd be back to square one. He noticed my hesitation and smiled. "Don't worry," he said, his tone easy. "I'll cover you." It was the test. The final test. Would I remain independent, or would I become his beneficiary again? I shook my head and declined politely. "How is that any different from you just wiring money straight into my account?" Alexander chuckled. "Do we really have to draw the lines so clearly?" I blinked at him, allowing a hint of steel to show in my gaze. "Not really. It's just when it comes to money, I have my own ways of solving things." And in that moment I knew exactly where to get the money. Leo still owed me. A severance fee for an old lover. After our very public breakup, he'd come looking for me several times. He couldn't accept that I had left so suddenly. At first he tried gifts, flowers, every form of coaxing. When I ignored him, he shifted to pressure, trying to use his influence to suppress my projects, to force me back to his side. He wasn't powerful enough to dominate the entire industry, but he'd caused me trouble. That video of him entangled with Sophia, the 6-minute masterpiece, I had kept it tucked away, thinking it wiser to leave a line in case our paths crossed again. Now Leo had crossed me one too many times. It was time to collect. I had Claire find a broker, someone anonymous and disposable. He took the video to Leo. Whatever money she got out of him, we'd split 80/20. I told Clara, have her say this, you don't want people to know it only lasted 6 minutes, do you? Clara shot me a thumbs up. Brutal. I love it. I was stomping down hard on Leo's most vulnerable asset, his pride. The number we asked for was obscene. And in the end he paid. He would never know that the money found its way into my hands. In his heart, I was still the woman who had once loved him deeply, only to be left heartbroken. Always leave a line. Who knows when cooperation might be needed again. With the cash in hand, I carefully vetted the entertainment fund. 3 rounds of due diligence. Alexander's endorsement was the final seal of approval. I made my decision. I poured in every cent of cash I had, my heart hammering against my ribs. It was the biggest gamble of my life. I hadn't expected it to work so fast. The very next year, one of the first films the fund backed became a surprise international blockbuster. I made back my principal in one stroke. By the 3rd year, the fund's entertainment company listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. By the 5th, I cashed out completely. I was financially free. The money was mine. Not Leo's. Not Alexander's. During those years of dizzying growth, I even dated Alexander briefly. For a year. I wanted to see what it was like to be with a man of his power on equal footing. We parted amicably, my decision. The experience I discovered was not that extraordinary. The sex was fine. The conversation was stellar. But men like him, I realized, lacked a certain sense of service. They were used to being served. Still, Alexander never quite let go of me. He often invited me out and I would join if the mood struck. But the dynamic was forever changed. He looked at me not as a beautiful diversion but as a peer. A worthy adversary. A potential partner. At the peak of my acting career, I began my transition. I moved behind the scenes, shifting from actress to producer to financier to board member. I became a legend of the industry, but for a new reason. The line of men wanting to chase me still stretched from my doorstep to Paris. Broad shoulders, slim waists, sleek sports cars, honeyed words. Each one more flattering than the last. I picked one, a charming, dimpled artist 10 years my junior, and presented him to my mother. Life is short, I told her, watching her eyes widen as the young man poured her tea with effortless grace. Seize joy while you can. Don't waste it staring at the moon in an empty courtyard. Her lifelong faith in depending on men crumbled in the face of my serene independence. When the young puppy of a man had her laughing and blushing like a girl, she finally admitted over a glass of wine that perhaps a woman should hold her fate firmly in her own hands. It was the greatest victory of all. Freedom tasted like salt spray in silence. I was in Tahiti on a private motu with water so blue it hurt to look at. There was no schedule, no calls from Clara unless it was an emergency, no pressure. The only sounds were the rustle of palm fronds, the gentle lap of the lagoon against the white sand, and the distant cry of gulls. For the first time in over a decade, I was truly, utterly alone. And I was not lonely. I was full. My phone, relegated to a beach bag, buzzed insistently. It was Clara. I considered ignoring it, but the habit of a lifetime was too strong. This had better be good, I answered, my voice lazy with sun. You're trending again, she said, her tone a mixture of amusement and awe. What did I do? I've been face down on a lounger for 72 hours. It's a fan edit. They've compiled all your best moments. The red carpets, the award speeches, that iconic scene from Broken Wings, and set it to some heartbreaking ballad. It's actually really well done. I smiled, stretching my toes in the warm sand. Send it to me. I watched it later that evening, sipping a rum punch as the sun bled into the ocean. The edit was masterful. It told the story of Elise Sterling. The rise, the glory, the heartbreak, the resilience. They made me look like a tragic goddess. And then at the very end they'd spliced in a new clip. It was Leo giving an interview on a recent business podcast. He looked older, the cocky assurance softened into something that resembled regret. The host had asked him about his ventures in the entertainment industry. Leo had deflected, then unprompted said, "You know, I made mistakes. Everyone does. But there was one person who was truly special. Elise Sterling. She was the only pure white jasmine in a garden of, well, let's just say other flowers. Unique. Fragile. Incorruptible." I laughed out loud. a sharp, sudden sound in the quiet evening. Fragile. Incorruptible. He still saw me through the lens of the fantasy I'd sold him. He had bought his own hype. The edit had cut his quote perfectly, making him look like a man consumed by wistful longing, his words a tribute to the one who got away. The comments were flooded with people sighing over the tragic romance, the lost love. It was perfect. The final seal on the narrative. I was forever etched in public memory as the wronged innocent, the love he foolishly let slip away. My brand was bulletproof. It also reminded me of a question Alexander had asked me years ago on the balcony in Singapore. What is it you truly want? Back then I couldn't say it. I couldn't let anyone glimpse the sheer scale of my ambition. But now, watching the video of my own mythologized life, the answer was so simple it was laughable. I never wanted to be the jasmine. I never wanted to be the most beautiful flower in someone else's greenhouse, dependent on their care, subject to their whims. I wanted to be the one who owned the garden. The thought was a catalyst. The peace of the island suddenly felt like stagnation. I cut my vacation short. Back in the city, the energy was different. I wasn't returning to a role or a set. I was returning to my office. My real one. The sleek, modern space in a steel and glass tower that housed sterling capital. My face was still on magazine covers, but now it was in the business section. From silver screen to Wall Street, the unlikely rise of Elise Sterling. The line of men still stretched to Paris, but now they were different. They were founders with pitch decks, investors looking for partners, tech geniuses with world-changing ideas. They looked at me not as a beauty to be won, but as a mind to be convinced, capital to be secured. It was a far more satisfying courtship. I settled back into the rhythm of deal flow, of board meetings, of analyzing spreadsheets that represented people's dreams and livelihoods. I loved it. I loved the power of yes and the finality of no. I loved building something that was entirely, unquestionably mine. Months passed in a productive blur. Then a proposal landed on my desk that made me pause. It was a takeover bid. A hostile one. The target was a mid-sized entertainment company. Its name was familiar, a company that had produced a few of my earlier films. And its largest minority shareholder was Leo. A slow smile spread across my face. It wasn't about revenge. Revenge was a petty, small-minded emotion. This was about strategy. The company was undervalued, poorly managed, and ripe for restructuring. It was a good investment. The fact that wresting it from Leo's grasp would be a delightful side effect was merely poetic. I called the head of my mergers and acquisitions team. Let's move on this. Quietly at first. I want us to acquire a controlling interest before anyone knows what's happening. The operation was executed with military precision. We bought up shares through shell companies, made quiet offers to disgruntled minority holders, and positioned ourselves perfectly. The first Leo knew of it was when he received a formal notice of an emergency board meeting, called by the new majority shareholder, Sterling Capital. I decided to attend the meeting myself. I wore a simple, impeccably cut black suit. No jewelry except for my Vacheron Constantin watch, the one he'd given me which I'd never sold. I thought the irony was nice. My hair was pulled back in a severe ponytail. I looked like what I was, a CEO, a predator. I walked into the boardroom of his company. The other board members, mostly older men I recognized from various industry functions, looked up. Their expressions shifted from curiosity to shock to obsequiousness in the space of a heartbeat. Leo was the last to arrive. He strode in, already talking, already annoyed. What is the meaning of this emergency? He stopped dead. His eyes found me at the head of the table, in the chair that had always been his. The color drained from his face. Elise. The word was a disbelieving whisper. Mr. Leo, I said, my voice cool and professional. Please take a seat. We have a lot to discuss regarding the future direction of this company. The meeting was a masterclass in humiliation for him. I was calm, prepared, and ruthless. I dissected the company's poor performance, outlined my vision for its restructuring, and presented the shareholder agreement that gave me ultimate control. He sat there, stunned into silence, watching the woman he'd once pitied and patronized dismantle his kingdom piece by piece. After the meeting, as the others filed out, he remained seated. I gathered my papers. Why? He asked, his voice hoarse. Was this all because of what happened? Because of Sophia? Because of me? I looked at him, then really looked at him. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a confused vulnerability. For the first time I felt a flicker of something akin to pity. "No, Leo," I said, my voice softer than I'd intended. "This isn't about you. It hasn't been about you for a very long time." I gestured around the room, at the building, at the world beyond the window. "This was always the plan. You were just a stepping stone." The truth, laid bare, was a crueler blow than any revenge plot could ever have been. I had not been pining for him. I had not been broken by him. I had simply used him and moved on to bigger things. His role in my life had been that of a useful idiot. His face crumpled. He had no response to that. I walked out of the boardroom, my heels clicking decisively on the polished marble floor. I didn't look back. Later that night, sitting in my penthouse apartment, a single glass of whiskey in my hand, I scrolled through the news headlines. The takeover was already public knowledge. Elise Sterling stages hostile takeover of Phoenix Entertainment. Sterling Capital's bold move. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Alexander Vance. I saw the news. "Ruthless. I'm impressed." I smiled and typed back. "I had a good teacher." His reply came instantly. "The student has surpassed the master. Dinner next week? To discuss a potential merger." He added a winking emoji. I laughed. A merger. Of course. He'd seen my power, my success, and now he wanted to align with it. Not own it. Not control it. Merge with it. It was the highest compliment he could have paid me. I looked out at the glittering skyline of the city, a kingdom I had carved out for myself. I thought of my mother, who was now happily traveling with her young beau, funded by me but finally free of the desperate need for a man's validation. I thought of Leo sitting in his shrinking corner of a company I now owned. I thought of the young girl stealing paper liners from the school bathroom, who could never have dreamed of this. I had started with nothing but a pretty face and a desperate will to survive. I had been a flower in someone else's garden, dependent on their light, their water, their whims. Now I owned the garden. And every flower in it was mine. The penthouse was silent, a rare thing. The only light came from the city below, a sprawling tapestry of gold and white stretching to the horizon. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling window, a crystal tumbler of amber whiskey in my hand, not drinking, just holding its warmth. The takeover of Phoenix Entertainment was complete. The headlines had shifted from shocked to accepting. Elise Sterling was now a force of nature, a fact of business life. My phone glowed on the glass table behind me. A text from Alexander. "Dinner. Thursday. 8 p.m. I'll send a car." It wasn't a question. It was a statement from a man used to being obeyed. But so was I. I didn't reply immediately. I let the silence stretch, let the power of the unanswered message hang in the air between us. He had called me ruthless. He was right. But ruthlessness wasn't a trait he'd taught me. It was one I'd been born with. He had merely given me a sharper set of tools. When I finally texted back, "See you then," it was an hour later. A small, petty power play, but necessary. We were no longer mentor and student. We were potential partners. The dynamics had to be established and re-established at every turn. The restaurant he chose was predictably exclusive, a place where the maitre d' knew patrons by the cut of their suit rather than their face. Alexander was already there, seated at a prime table, studying the wine list. He stood as I approached, a gesture of old-world courtesy that felt both genuine and calculated. "Elise." He smiled, his eyes doing a quick, appreciative scan of my simple black dress. It was expensive, but it wasn't trying to impress. It was armor. "You look formidable." "Thank you, Alexander." I took my seat, refusing the sommelier's help with my napkin. "I feel it." We made small talk through the first course. The art market. A recent political scandal. The conversation was a duel of wits, each of us parrying and thrusting with polished ease. He was probing, trying to find the edges of the new Elise Sterling, the one who commanded boardrooms instead of film sets. Finally, over the main course, he set down his fork. The Phoenix acquisition was brilliantly executed. Nasty but brilliant. You left Leo with just enough to save face, but not enough to ever be a threat again. It was a masterstroke. "It was business," I said, swirling the wine in my glass. "The company was poorly managed. I saw an opportunity." His presence was merely a complicating factor. "A factor you seem to enjoy complicating," he observed, a sly grin on his face. I allowed a small smile to touch my lips. I won't deny there was a certain poetic satisfaction to it. He leaned forward, his voice dropping, the noise of the restaurant fading into a hum around us. This is what I wanted to discuss. This instinct you have. It's not taught. It's innate. You and I, we see the board the same way. We see 3 moves ahead where others see only the next piece. I remained silent, waiting. I have a proposal, he said. A true merger. Not of companies but of efforts. Vance Capital and Sterling Capital. A partnership. We pool our resources, our intelligence, our networks. We wouldn't just be players, Elise. We would be the house. We would own the table. It was everything I had worked for. The ultimate validation. To be invited not as a lover, not as a protégé, but as an equal to one of the most powerful financial minds in the world. The temptation was a physical pull. The safety, the sheer scale of what we could build together. I looked at him, at the keen intelligence in his eyes, the absolute certainty that I would say yes. He was offering me a kingdom. But it would be our kingdom. And I had spent too long building my own to share the throne. Alexander, I said, my voice gentle but firm. It's a generous offer. A flattering one. His smile widened, anticipating my acceptance. But I have to decline. The smile didn't vanish. It froze, then slowly melted into a mask of polite confusion. May I ask why? Is it the terms? We can structure it however you like. You'd have equal say, of course. It's not the terms, I said. It's the principle. I spent the first half of my life answering to others. To my mother's desperation, to my agents, to Leo's whims, even to your tutelage. Sterling Capital, it's mine. The decisions, the successes, the failures, they're all mine. That independence is the one thing I won't trade. Not even for a partnership with you. He stared at me for a long moment and I saw the calculation in his eyes shift. He was reassessing me yet again. Not as a student, not as a partner, but as a rival. A true equal who had chosen a path separate from his own. A slow, genuine smile spread across his face, one of pure admiration. Well, I'll be damned, he murmured. You really did it. You really built your own garden. I did, I said softly. Then I suppose, he said, raising his glass, we will have to be content as friendly competitors. And perhaps occasionally, allies on particularly tempting projects. I clinked my glass against his. I would like that very much. The rest of the dinner was spent in a new relaxed camaraderie. The tension was gone, replaced by a mutual respect that was far more valuable than any business merger. When I returned home, the emptiness of the penthouse felt different. It felt silent, it felt peaceful. It was filled with my own presence, my own choices. I walked to the window again, looking out at my city, my kingdom of steel and light. My phone buzzed. Not Alexander. Not Clara. It was my mother. A photo lit up the screen, her on a sun-drenched terrace somewhere in the Mediterranean, laughing, her arm linked with her young beau. She looked happy. Truly, uncomplicatedly happy. The caption read, "Thank you for my life." Tears pricked my eyes, not of sadness, but of a profound and quiet completion. The cycle was broken. The desperate need, the clinging dependence that had defined her life and nearly defined mine was over. She was free because I had freed myself first. I scrolled through my contacts, past the investors, the directors, the powerful names that now filled my address book. I stopped at a name I hadn't dialed in years. Leo. I didn't call. I sent a text. Simple. Clean. The board has voted to offer you a generous consultancy role. A face-saving exit. Your experience with the company's early assets is still valued. Let me know if you're interested. It wasn't forgiveness. It was better. It was absolution from a position of absolute power. It was me saying, you are no longer a threat, so I can afford to be magnanimous. It was the final nail in the coffin of our old dynamic. His reply came minutes later, just one word. Yes. No thank you. No apology. Just a stark acknowledgement of the new reality. It was perfect. I put the phone down and walked out onto the terrace. The night air was cool on my skin. I looked up at the moon, a sharp sliver of white in the dark sky. I thought of the girl I had been, kneeling on a hard floor begging for tuition money. I thought of the woman on the balcony in Singapore, pretending to cry into the wind. I had played so many roles. The devoted mistress. The heartbroken star. The cunning student. The ruthless But tonight, standing alone in the quiet dark, I wasn't playing a part. For the first time there was no audience, no script, no goal other than to simply be. I was Elise Sterling, the owner of the garden. And the view from the top was everything I'd ever dreamed it would be. The end.